Hello, hello. Welcome to May's Joy Box tutorial. And a big welcome to all our new members. So glad you're here. Make sure that you get in the Facebook group. It's not a requirement, but make sure to get in there if you want and say hi and check out all the past creations done by other members and post your own so that we can be inspired by you and encourage you. And it's just a fun, safe place to share our love for crafting. So let's get into this month's Joy Box. It has this amazing, fun lattice frame with 4 interchangeables. And we are starting to incorporate interchangeables into our shop. And we created this. This is a specific design for Joybox. You won't be able to get the lattice frame anywhere else on our website. But what I wanted to point out was the little interchangeables that go inside here will be able you'll be able to purchase more if you want. So you're going to start to see some more of these round inserts on our website. They'll come with different frames. We've got just a solid frame coming. We've got some different pattern frames coming. But what's great about these is no matter what frame you use, the inserts will be the same. So there's some really cute ones coming, and we hope to incorporate more for the different seasons as well. So, but the lattice frame is going to be specific and exclusive to Joybox. Okay, so let's talk about what comes in your box first, and then what you're going to need. So the first thing that I want to mention is make sure that when you get your box that you inspect it and that it has all the things. We are humans pack your box, no robot involved here. And so we do make mistakes and sometimes things get forgotten. So please let us know. We want to right our wrongs and make sure that you get all of the items that you are supposed to get. Also, make sure that nothing is broken. We do our absolute best to package our items. We shrink wrap things to keep things together to help protect them, but things happen. We don't anticipate everything that the postman can throw at us, but we're getting better at that. So please let us know if anything's broken, and we will make it right and ship out a replacement. So just message us. Our email is listed at the bottom here for you to use. And again, don't worry about paying for a replacement. It's free if anything is broken or missing, please. We want to make sure that you get your items right away. So your insert just talks about the different website locations to find information. If you'd rather use our website to view the tutorials, there's a link there. If you're trying to stay out of Facebook or whatever that may be, there's a second option there. The Joybox member login, if you need to update your payment information, shipping information, the logins there, and then the link to the Facebook group. So if you are watching this in the tutorials and are looking for that Facebook group link, that is available there. So I encourage you to write on your calendar the day that you want to craft. Schedule yourself for that time. It's super important that we take this time serious. It's important that we give ourselves time to de-stress and relax and have some fun so that we can come back energized after that. It just helps us serve others better. It helps serve ourselves better if we make sure that we give ourselves time for the things that we need. So, and I know that can be super hard. You know, we're so busy with just life, family, friends, commitments, all of it. But what I find is if I put myself in the schedule, I put myself down in Google Calendar, whatever I'm using, it solidifies it a little bit more, and I'm more likely to do the craft if I schedule that time for that. So I encourage you to do that. Again, open your box, inspect all your items, and then when it's crafting day, you'll be able to catch the replay of the video in the group or on that member space. And the great thing about these videos is you can watch them at the speed that you want. So you can fast forward, you know, if you're a seasoned joy boxer, fast forward past all this stuff and get right to the nitty gritty stuff, right to the tutorial. A lot of times when I'm watching tutorials, I will watch it on the 2x speed and watch it super fast the first time, getting an overview of what's happening. And then I'll go in and do the craft and maybe have the video playing in the background in case I need to refer to it. So it's just a great option. We get to fast forward, we get to rewind, we get to pause when we need to. So those are available. And then there's also a written instructions that are available on our website and in the Facebook group if you don't want to watch the video or you know, have the internet on, because it can be a distraction. You can print out the written instructions and go that route as well. And then I encourage you to post pictures in the group and let us see your beautiful creations. The more we post, the more confident we become in our creative journey, and that just, the more confidence we get, the more we want to create. And so it's just a really great cycle. So I encourage you to post. And you never know who you're going to inspire. You might think your item isn't as great, but there are a lot of times in the group that people are just inspired by what others are doing, and it's just awesome. So, okay, enough about the insert. Let's talk about what's in your box. So you've got the lattice frame, and the lattice frame is a few pieces. You're going to have a circle. Ooh, excuse me. You're going to have the top lattice frame, and it has the circle cut out. That's the top. And then the bottom of the frame is got the solid piece that your insert is going to sit into, and then a little hole that allows you to pop out your inserts if you can't grab it from the front. So easy access, easy to exchange out those inserts. So they're going to sit like this. Now, if your piece comes flipped, you might think, oh, I have the same two pieces. All you have to do is rotate it and they will. And I think even if you do this, they look the same. Just make sure to rotate it so that they're going opposite directions and you get that great lattice form. So they'll sit like this. You've got the round, and then you've got your 4 frame pieces that will frame your lattice pieces. So make sure that you have 4 of those in your box. And I just go all the way around like that. Okay, so that is your base of this interchangeable. Then you're going to have the 4 seasons for inserts. So make sure you have your 4 seasoned cutout, and then the base that's going to get glued on. So you've got Hello Spring, Winter, Fall, and Summer. So those are there. We provided 3 colors for this joy box, but if you have other colors that you want to incorporate, we always recommend painting and creating in the colors that you love. This one was fairly neutral, and so we kept the colors to more of a neutral setting. But again, use what you want in that regard. The brown is the wax, and we'll talk about how to use that. And then we've got black and white. You'll also have a mini personal or a one-time glue bottle, excuse me, a makeup sponge. You've got your sanding block, which is great for smoothing out rough edges on the wood. After painting wood, sometimes the fibers in the wood will stick up. They just expand. It's a natural thing that happens with wood. And it depends on how the wood was manufactured. And it can even just be a certain section of your piece. For instance, you could paint this, and then just this little area will get rough. The sanding block is great for just knocking those fibers down and getting that smooth finish again. You can also use your sanding block to distress edges and make things look a little worn, and I'll show you that as well. And then you also have your black sponge brush and a stand for your frame to display. So that's what's in your box this month. The things that you're going to need are very small. We don't need much this month. You're going to need a water jug to clean out your brush, a rag, and not really necessary. You can incorporate some masking tape to hold your pieces down, but there's not a lot of small pieces. I might mask my frame pieces. We'll kind of see how that goes. And then baby wipes. I'm going to use baby wipes to apply the wax to my lattice. But you could use, if you don't have baby wipes, you could use a damp paper towel or an old dampened rag. I think that's it. Let me just double check my list here. Yep, that's it. Okay, let's get started. So I'm going to start with the lattice pieces. So I'm just going to put everything aside here. Let's stack these up, get them out of the way, and work on these two pieces. We only have the 3 colors this month, but there are so many combinations that you could do with these colors. You could even mix them a little bit and create some grays. You could use the black and the white with the brown and distress the lattice. So I am using the baby wipe to apply the wax. I've wrapped the baby wipe just around my finger. I dipped it a little bit into the wax, and I'm just rubbing that on. And you can use this wax to create a kind of a lighter brown stain or even a darker stain. If you want a really dark stained finish, and you really don't need to go around all the edges like I am. In actuality, the edges are going to be covered up by the frame, and even the circle bit is going to be covered up from the frame that holds the inserts in. But if you wanted a darker stain, back to that point that I was making, just apply it a little thicker. So you can see I've got a little bit of a darker stripe here. I used a little bit more stain, and I didn't go and wipe off any excess. So I'm going to leave. If you wanted it darker, you would just let that sit for a few minutes, let it soak into that wood, and then wipe away any excess, and you'll get a little bit of a darker stain. Or if you want it to be lighter, apply it and then wipe it away, and that will give you a lighter color. So I know I said you shouldn't have to, you don't have to stain the entire thing, but I'm a little bit OCD. So, and as I'm talking, it's just kind of natural for me to just kind of forget what I'm doing. So I stained the whole thing. Okay, so there's that piece. And we'll do the second piece. So this is the back, the very bottom of the frame, the very back piece. And again, I don't need to go all the way around those edges. This is going to get covered up. And I really don't even need to do this center circle, but I've already started, so I'm just going to finish. So you could paint your lattice white and then do a frame and do your frame in the brown. So many different ways that you can make this your own just with the colors that you have. So just to show you that we won't see those edges, right? But isn't that just pretty? I love the lattice frame, this lattice pattern. It also reminds me of kind of like a basket, a tobacco basket decor piece. And those old okay. Well, let me rephrase that. Tabasco basket. That is a tongue twister, guys. There we go. So then you can go back, and if there was an area that was just a little bit lighter, you can just rub a little bit more on and darken it up a little bit. Could be an area where maybe you rubbed off a little too much. But remember, wood, it will take stain and wax and paint differently. So you could, you know, if there's a hard area where it isn't as porous, it might not take as much of that color, or vice versa, there might be some darker areas, and that's just the beauty of wood and giving us just some really cool texture. So there we go, that piece is done. All right, so we'll put that aside, and I am going to I think I am going to tape the frame pieces down. I think that might help. I think I can stack them this way. And maybe stack my tape to make it a little thicker and have them all just stacked right on top, right next to each other. There we go. And then that is going to be black. And I'm also going to paint my letters black. I'm just going to grab a piece of parchment paper or baker's paper here just to help keep my mess to a minimum on my desk. I do have an acrylic top which cleans up fairly well, but sometimes it's nice just to grab your piece and toss it when you're done. A good idea for you when you're crafting, if you don't need your box anymore, you could flatten your box and craft right on top of your box. I've seen members do that. Also, the tissue paper inside, you can stack the 2 tissue papers and that can help protect your surface. It's not waterproof. So, you know, for things like this where we're just lightly painting something, that would work, but it's not a fail-proof item for that. So Let me just put that little disclosure out there. It's a light duty tablecloth. Tissue paper is, I guess. Okay. Where is my paper pad? Let's see. I lost my tray. 1 second. Okay. So with your kit, you will also get a tray, and I always forget to mention that, and simply because I don't use the trays. I have a paint pad here that's always sitting on my desk. This is just something for painting. I use it to do my morning paintings and stuff. You can buy these on Amazon. I think they're paper palettes called. Anyways, before we go on, I want to talk about your makeup sponge. When we use the makeup sponge, we're going to use this large end. And I forgot to mention that I always cut mine in half so I can use this other piece in another location or another project. I always try and get as much out of the makeup sponges as I can, but you don't need to cut yours in half unless you maybe are going to be painting your letters a different color. Then you would want to cut it in half so you could use your makeup sponge for 2 different colors. I'm going to be painting everything in regards to our small detailed items with the same color, so I just need the one. Now, when you're using the makeup sponge, you're going to use the large end, and when you load it up, it's going to look like this. There's going to be a ton of paint on there. There's a huge glob. And you don't want that. You want to make sure that you offload it. So when you dip it in your pot, you're loading it. When you tap it on your tray, you're offloading it. So you'll see how a lot of that paint has come off, but it also allows that makeup sponge to soak in that paint. So we're offloading it, and now we have a nice, smooth, small amount of paint, which is what we want. We don't want to have a big glob because then that paint is going to fall off the edge and create a mess. And for these items, it's not such a big deal because we could come in with a paper towel or a baby wipe and wipe away those edges. But when you're dealing with the smaller pieces like this, where you have all of these small little holes, trying to clean the paint out of those areas is a nightmare. So we just want to make sure that you're using just the right amount of paint on your makeup sponge. And then we are just going to tap, tap, tap. And we want to tap lightly. We don't want to tap so heavy that our makeup sponge goes around our element. And the reason for that, this is kind of a bad example, because we're using black, our edges are a dark brown from the laser, but as we're tapping, we want to just tap it so it stays on the top. Now, if you're using, let's say, white for your Hello Spring and for your frames or whatnot, and you push it so hard that your makeup sponge goes off the side, what's going to happen is you're going to have white paint around your edge. And again, with this circle, no big deal. You can go and wipe those off right away. But when you're dealing with small little pieces like this, you don't want to have to try and clean all of those edges in those small pieces. So it's important to just use a light tapping motion. And for the most part, you'll need 1 or 2 coats. Wood is porous. It's going to soak up that first coat. And so don't worry about your first coat looking splotchy or where you can see some wood grain still through the painted surface. with the method of doing a nice light coat, it protects our edges, right? We don't get a bunch of paint on our edges, and it actually dries super fast. So typically by the time I get done painting all of the items that I want, let's say black, because I'm doing such a light coat, when I'm finished, I can usually go back to the beginning, you know, the first item I painted, and it's already dry and ready for that second coat. If you put too heavy of a coat on, it takes a lot longer to dry, which can be a little frustrating, especially if we're trying to finish a project in a timely manner, or maybe we only have X amount of time. It's nice to be able to see a project through and not have to put it away if at all possible. I think it just helps, you know, having that feeling of accomplishment when we're creating. I know I always feel not only just re-energized and de-stressed when I create, but when I'm able to finish it, you just have that feeling of accomplishment. Like, yeah, I was able to find time for myself and complete this task. And I hate to think of crafting as a task, but you know, it does feel better if we can get it done in one setting. So just a light tap, and we've got those pieces done. So I'm going to set those aside, and we're going to come in and do all of the letter parts of our inserts. Now again, you can do any color that you want. Flip it around, do the white as your frames and the black as your base. You can stain your letters with the wax. You can leave them the light brown. This light colored wood is super pretty as well. Or you can incorporate your own colors. So maybe you want to incorporate some more seasonal colors, maybe yellow for spring, or maybe a baby blue for spring and yellow for summer. And some fall colors and then winter colors. Okay, there we go. Stacking those just right on top. I'm going to bring my bases off to the side here because I'm going to paint those white. So for the most part, when I'm painting my pieces, I'll just hold it down with my finger or even my fingernail. But if you want to keep your fingers semi-clean, you could use just a end of a pencil to hold it while, you know, this part is wet and you just need to finish that last little bit. You can find other items to hold it down, or you can tape it down as well. Even though they are larger pieces, having a piece of tape underneath can be helpful in holding your piece down, especially when you're just getting to that last little piece of the frame or of the insert here. for the most part, I can just hold this with my fingers and we're good to go. Until you get to that last little bit. And then the last one here. So the other inserts that we are going to start incorporating will have little seasonal images in the circles. We've got some with a heart for Valentine's. We've got some with a oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought. St. Patrick's Day. I was trying to think of, it was in my brain and I could see the picture of it, but I just couldn't form the words. So for St. Patrick's Day, it's a rainbow with a pot and yeah, so we've got a snowman or a snowflake, but we think they're just super fun, and these little frames are perfect for just kind of switching out for some seasonal decor. Okay, so for these rounds, I am going to use my black sponge brush for this. And I'm going to pull out actually, let's see if I can, I've got a spray bottle here. You can add a little bit of water right inside your pot here to help loosen it up. Or you can just dip your brush in some water. And then I'm going to just kind of get rid of most of that. I have water in this sponge. It's not dripping off, but I know that it's full. And now I can go grab some of the paint on my brush here. The reason that we add a little water to the paint, especially when we're painting a larger surface like this, flat surface, I should even say, is because it helps that paint flow a little bit easier. Wood is porous and is going to try and soak up every ounce of that paint, which can make it super frustrating to try and push the paint around. It starts to kind of just get globbed up in one area, and then we've got really thick brush strokes because we're trying to push it around. It starts to dry fast. So I always go in with a super light coat the first time and pretty much seal all those wood fibers so that my second coat goes on super smooth and I can use more of a thicker coat. And I was able to cover all 4 of these squares with just the amount of water. I'm kind of starting to have a little bit more of the catch. See how it's catching and it's not flowing very well. Just with one dip of the brush in water, I didn't need any more. So as you're painting your piece, you also want to make sure that you don't have any standing water on your pieces because it is wood, it will warp. And so I take a look at my piece typically, and usually my first piece, because that's going to have the most water on it because I used it first, there was more water in my brush. But if you can do this, you know, rotate your piece and see water kind of move around, or you can see a puddle, you want to take that off immediately with a rag. Just wipe off the excess water or tap it off. You can also use a baby wipe and take off the excess there. So there we go. I am going to set this aside, let this dry, and we're going to go back to our black pieces. So we'll pull these off here, and now we'll put a second coat on the black. I'm going to bring out my main piece here. Some different ideas that you could do with the inserts is you could add paper underneath the cutouts. Instead of painting the base, so instead of painting these pieces the white, you could use paper. If you had scrapbook paper or pattern paper, you could Mod Podge that paper onto the back and then just glue these right onto the paper backing. And that could give you some fun seasonal patterns to use for your sign. So if you had, I don't know, some snowflake pattern paper, that would be really pretty under the winter wording, or flowers under spring. You could also, like I said, use different colors. If you had different paint, you could incorporate that. You could also use fabric. And just like with Mod Podge, you would just apply, or just like with the paper, you apply Mod Podge to the round, lay out your fabric on top, and then just smooth it out with a gift card to get a nice even surface, and then glue this right onto the fabric, and that would work too. So even if you didn't have paper, fabric would be cool. It would give you a nice texture. Now, one thing to note, if you are going to try fabric, is you probably want something on the thinner side. I wouldn't use like denim, just because that's a thicker fabric, so it's going to raise it off a little bit. But this makes the perfect pattern. You just lay it on your paper, your fabric, trace around it with a pencil, cut that circle out, Mod Podge on top of there, lay your fabric / paper on, and you've got a pattern on that back piece. So some just different ways to kind of think about finishing your sign. Okay. And the second coat usually goes pretty fast. We're concentrating on kind of filling in any gaps in the wood, or any areas where we still see some of that wood, and just getting a nice smooth finish on our piece here. Usually that second coat goes a lot faster. Okay. You could also use an old calendar. Calendars always have great pictures in for seasonal items. I had actually picked up a calendar from the Dollar Tree, and it just had some really pretty art in the calendar. But that's an idea as well. Maybe you don't have pattern paper, but you have an old calendar that you could recycle into your interchangeables. Or an old gift bag. Some of the gift bags that you get from different places of business always have really pretty patterns on them. Tissue paper is another one. And what was the last one I was just thinking of? Oh, napkins. Napkins are great to use as well. Okay. And then the black is done. So let's go back to this white. I might have to blow dry it. Blast it with some air here real quick. Still just a little damp. There we go. All right, let's go back to our white. And I'm going to squeegee out most of that water. I'm going to leave just a little bit in there. I don't need as much as I had originally had with my first coat, but a little bit of water isn't going to hurt anything, and it just helps that paint flow. The other thing when I'm painting these wood signs or wood pieces is I like to keep my edges dark. And so to do that, I will purposely start my brush inside the circle or inside the shape and brush out towards the edge. And that just kind of lifts it up and keeps my brush from collecting paint on the edge. So if you, see if I can get the right angle here. If I were to start my brush here and pull towards the center, the paint here is going to collect on my edge, and then I don't have that nice clean black edge. So just a quick tip, if you want your edges to stay the dark color, which for me that just is, I think it helps the items pop and gives it that really more 3D look, you know, the layered 3D look. And painting the edges can be a little cumbersome. So to be honest, I don't like to do that. It takes more time, more coats to get those edges nicely painted. So I opt for the dark edge. And that's kind of my recommendation there. So try and just kind of keep your edges nice and black. By pulling from the center to the outside. And if you get your edges, if you paint your edges and you're like, oh, whoops, I've got a little bit on my edge, just grab a baby wipe or a wet rag and wipe it off, and you're good to go. Now, if you don't notice it, though, let's say you paint it and then you're putting your piece together and you're like, oh, no, I got this big glob of white paint on my edge. You can use your sanding block, and typically it will sand right off. Or you can take a little bit of your black paint and dab it on the edge there to cover it up. Or use a black pen or marker. I've used a Sharpie marker to clean up my edges before. And sometimes those Sharpie markers, especially if you're dealing with pieces that are more detailed, work really well. Okay, there we go. So that is done, and we can start gluing. But we gotta let these dry, so we'll start gluing up our base, our frame. We'll let these dry, and then we can glue our letters onto those. So I'm gonna just lift this little tray up, move these to the side, and bring this around here. Okay, so with your one-time use super glue, you get it in two parts. You've got your tube and your applicator. So your applicator will pierce the tube as you twist the applicator on. You do not need to find a needle to open the bottle. It will do that for you with the applicator, or the nozzle, I should say. This is a nozzle. Two things. As you are twisting on your nozzle, make sure that you hold your bottle by the seam and not by the tube. As you hold it by the tube and twist it on, glue will come squirting out. I've done it. And so learn from my mistakes. Hold it by the seam so that you're not putting pressure on that tube as you release the pressure. Okay, and then the other thing is when you're twisting that nozzle on, you want to have it upright. This is super glue and it's a liquid form. So if you were to twist it on like this in the downward position, glue will just start to fall out. So seam, keep it upright. Your nozzle will pierce your bottle and you'll hear it. There'll be a little release and sometimes little bubbles will kind of pop up. And just go slow. There it is. And it just squirted out some on my finger, so I've got glue there. That's okay. Okay. And we're just slowly going to twist that on. There we go. So now for the lattice frame, we do not need to glue every little piece. And then actually, I'm just going to put 4 dots on each corner and then 4 dots at the midpoint of the outside line, and then a couple dots on the circle part. So I'll probably put about 8 dots, try and hit those around there. And that's it, okay? And then we're going to just flip it over. We'll line it up, making sure the outside edges are all in line. And just hold this here. So super glue dries super fast. You don't have much time to adjust things. So make sure that you're ready for that. And especially when you're gluing smaller pieces, it's important to kind of just be prepared, know where you're going to place the items so that you can just place it and go with maybe a few small adjustments as needed, you know, shifting it just slightly. It's also handy to have something heavy nearby so that you can plop something heavy on your piece and then move on to the next instead of having to hold it. I love my little clamps that I have from the Dollar Tree. These are in the crafting aisle, but if you didn't have this type of clamp or have access to the Dollar Tree, There's these other plastic clamps. Where is mine? I usually have it right here. Oh. Before I found the Dollar Tree clamps, I also used these. And they're great because they're covered with kind of a plastic covering so they don't scratch your surface, but they are great for holding your pieces as well. And then that way that sets, you can move on to the next piece. And by the time you get back, it's usually ready to go. So those are a couple different options. I use my exercise weights to hold my items sometimes. But okay, so that is the step one in your gluing. And then we have our circle frame here that's going to sit on this circle. And again, we don't have to have glue on all of the piece, just a couple drops. So I'm putting 8 drops, trying to kind of equally space them, 8 drops around my piece. I'm going to flip it over, kind of make sure that I'm somewhat centered here. And when you're applying this piece, what's important is your inside circle. You want that to match up as best you can because our inserts are going to sit in there. So I'm just running my finger over it, making sure that it's all nice and smooth. And then I'm going to hold. And then we will put our frames on. Okay, so this is all nice and smooth in there, so our inserts will go in really nice. Okay, now I've got my individual frame pieces. I'm going to lay those out before I put any glue on them just to make sure that we are good to go. Kind of see where I want those to be. And how doesn't that look so great? I love this dark wood stain with this black, but this could go great with white as well if you wanted to do a white frame. Would be super pretty. These colors are just amazing together. And you could do a white lattice with the dark frame pieces. It would be just pretty too. I'm excited to see how you all create yours. Okay, so for your frame pieces, kind of just work on one piece at a time. You want to make sure that your corners are lined up here and that it's nice and flat on the outside edge. This piece here is a little smaller than the actual frame, so this edge is not going to line up with the inside edge of the 4 pieces. I wanted it to look like you could see down into the lattice and that they were attached to the frame, not so much their own separate piece. I didn't want to see this in the design. So again, this is not going to line up with this. You want to make sure that your outer edges are all in line. And I love that this is square, so you can really, there's no right or wrong on what's up, what's down, side to side. It's kind of versatile that way. Okay. So as I'm placing this, I'm making sure that this outside edge is nice and smooth and flat. They're all aligned. And I should have my weight out so I can move to the next step. But Let's see if I can grab it. Okay. Super helpful. At least they're getting used for something. Okay. Get that one to hold there, and then we'll go to the next piece. I'm only putting 3 drops of paint on the frame piece, 1 on each end and then 1 on the middle. Okay. All right, so while that's drying or setting, it's only going to take a second here. I'm going to bring these pieces out and blow dry them. They're still pretty damp. And that's another thing that I want to mention is do not glue your pieces until it's completely dry. If these feel cool, like I can touch them and no paint comes away, but they're fairly cool to the touch. They feel damp. Cool equals damp in the painting world, which means they're not dry completely. And if I were to try and glue these on right now, my glue would react to the wet paint and it would just fall apart. It would not have a good adhesion to wet paint. So you want to make sure everything is nice and dry. Okay. So this is finished. And isn't that just so sharp looking? Love it. So pretty. All right. Let's get these guys glued on. We're just going to do our cool test. This one still feels a little damp right in this area. These ones are okay. All right, so now for the outside piece, or for your letter pieces, again, I'm just going to tap 4 pieces or 4 dots on the outside. I mean 8, sorry about that. I'm going to center 8 small dots, and then I am going to hit just kind of the bigger areas of the letters. Not going to worry about trying to do them all. Okay, and then we're going to line this up with the outside part of our circle, making sure that the outer edge is all nice and flat. It's all aligned so that our inserts will slide into our slot on our base. Okay. 8 little dots. I'm trying to equally space them as best I can. And then a few dots here and there on the inside. Oops. Got off just a little bit there. There we go. Remember, you don't have much play with the super glue, so kind of be ready for that. Sure that you're ready to place the item in the spot you want it. And if you don't like using super glue, you do not have to use the glue that we send. I love using it. It's fast, it's strong. But if you want to use, let's say, a crafter's tacky glue, you could. You could use Elmer's school glue, or an all-purpose glue, wood glue. I'm trying to think what else is out there. I think that's it. I think that's all I had in my mind. Any of those options will work. And they do give you more time to kind of adjust your pieces because they have a slower dry time. But the downside is that that is a slower dry time. So that if you are using something other than super glue, I would recommend having just some things that can help hold the piece in place while you move on to the other items. Okay, the last one here. Oh, it's stuck to my finger, goodness. Okay, remember, we want to make sure that we are clear all the way around. Okay, those are the 4 pieces. Now, just to show you that there were some areas where I did get a little bit of white on the edge. And you're not going to see this as you place it in the frame. It kind of sits down inside there nice, right? We don't see that it's flush. But if you wanted to clean those up, you could. I mentioned it earlier about, you know, if you had your color here on your black makeup sponge, you could just run that makeup sponge around your edge and clean up anything that was accidentally painted on. Cleans up fairly well. You can also use a marker or something to clean them up if you wanted to. But again, you're not going to see those in this case because the frame does cover it up. So there we go. Let's see, where are we at? We are in spring. So they slot right in, right? And they're not going to fall out. You could hang this on a wall and it's going to stay right inside there just from the, because it's not really a tight fit. I can even turn it a little bit, but it's not going to fall out. And then to get them out, you can grab it by the letters and pull it, or use the circle and pop it up and exchange it out that way. So I love this interchangeable. I love this design. And I'm hoping to have more interchangeables in the future soon. We're still kind of developing those, but be on the lookout for those. Oh, and then the last thing, you can also use your stand. So the way your stand works is the 2 slots slide together, creating an X-ish shape, and those will just sit right on there, and you can display it on a shelf as well if you don't want to hang it. So there is your May Joy Box. I hope you enjoyed crafting. Make sure to schedule time for yourself. It's super important. And post your pictures in the group so we can see how you created yours. I hope you guys have a fantastic month or a fantastic rest of your day whenever you're watching this. And we will be in touch. Have a great day. Bye.